Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday evening service. My name is Reverend Mary Morgan, and I am a staff minister at the Redondo Beach Center, and I'm very happy to be here with you this evening. Tonight's talk is going to be following through with the same thought that Reverend Beverly had on Sunday past, which is God's standard of perfection. So first, I'd like you to say with me right now, there is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is my life right now, and so it is. Now, when we did that, what did you just affirm? What we're affirming is that the attributes of God, the ones that we know about God, such as power, peace, beauty, love, light, all good things, those attributes are our attributes. So if you think about it, we are knowing that the perfection of God is our perfection. Now, you may scoff a little bit at that when you're thinking about, well, I quite don't feel perfect at this moment. But think about this for a second. You and I are expressions of God. God is having a good time by means of you and I. And we're showing God a good time by means of how we live. Isn't that correct? Now, the very first statement in the prayer treatment is one of recognition. And what is it that we're recognizing? We're recognizing God. We're recognizing the attributes of God. We're recognizing the divine presence, the creative intelligence, the divine mind, the allness, the oneness. And then the next step of prayer treatment is unification. And what is it that we're unified with? We're unified with that power and presence that created us. We can't be separate from God because we were created by God, right? So the thing is that each one of us has been individually formed to express the power and presence of God. Now, do you wake up every morning and say that to yourself in the mirror? Do you say, I am the divine expression of God right here and right now? Because you can. And when you do, it brings a type of energy to your experience in the day, and it sets the tone for the day, doesn't it? How we express that perfection, it's up to us. But we're all expressing it to our best ability. So you want to be doing the things that affirm your goodness, your light, your love, your peace, your power, your beauty as well. Now, some of you your mind may be drifting off to, well, I know some people in my life aren't quite the picture of perfection, right? Or maybe you have some own tapes in your mind that you're critical about yourself and saying, well, if I'm the expression of perfection, then I'm doomed, right? But think about this. You might be familiar with that expression, what we focus on expands. And what does that mean exactly? What we focus on expands. It means that what I think about all day becomes the truth of my being, and it becomes manifest in my expression. It becomes a reality. So think for a moment of those self-talk tapes that you might have. Are they positive? Are they filled with kindness? Are they filled with forgiveness and goodness? Or are they filled with negativity and judgmentalness and a sense of negativity like you should be better or whatever? Because wherever the direction of your thoughts are going, that's what you're going to call into your experience. You know why? Because we're all energy. Everything that we project out into the world is energy. We are these vibrational energy waves that are flowing out. And so everything on that vibrational wave that is coming out from us, it is corresponded to in the rest of the world. So that's why when you're having a bad day, things get worse. When you're having negative thoughts, things start to go south, down the rabbit hole. Have you ever noticed that? The moment that you do that, you need to shift out of that thinking and say, I am going to change the direction of the way my life is going today because I'm not happy with that. Because who's in charge other than you? Just you. You're in charge of whatever you do. So thinking thoughts all day that are positive can be really productive for a number of reasons, right? Those reasons are you want to create the goodness in your experience, and we want to create a successful experience. There is a book that is out that's called You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. And what does that mean? That story means that, in a nutshell, if we want our life to be a success, we need to adjust our negative thought patterns by replacing them with new thoughts that produce the results that we think about, that we want to create in our experience. Sometimes we get stuck in old habits and old thought patterns. I always picture, like an old dirt road on a farm that has those ruts that are real deep because so many trucks and cars have run in those ruts. Those ruts are very difficult to get out of. But the trick is, don't get stuck in that rut. Don't go in that path any longer. You just shift your thought, get out of the ruts, and say, I'm shifting my thought from this idea. Now, I want to give you an example. Did you know that your body is constantly renewing itself? And that every 11 months, every single cell in your body has restored and renewed itself. Do you know what that means? That means that each of us is only 11 months old. Think about that for a second. Each of us is only 11 months old. Now, we say sometimes we have cellular memory. Guess what? That cell was already sloughed off and replaced by a new one. Why are we feeding old negative tapes to new things? We can really create a new experience by shifting our thought and our consciousness, can't we? You know what that means? Every one of us is only 11 months old. So everyone you're looking at is 11 months old, and maybe some of us are wearing it a little better than others. However, we are new every moment of the day. So here's a true story. There was a woman that went in to her doctor's office, and she was diagnosed with cancer. And it was very very shocking to her. And she said to the doctor, okay, I'm accepting this, that you've said that I have cancer. Now, how long will it take? How long will it take to pass? And the doctor said, well, it's going to be about 10 months. So 10 months later, she came back to the doctor's office, and the doctor had done their tests and their blood work, and the doctor was astonished. And he said, there is absolutely no cancer in your body. You are completely healed. And she looked at him sort of surprised and said, well, why are you surprised? I mean, this is exactly what you said. And he goes, what are you talking about? She goes, well, when I asked you, you said it would take 10 months to pass. And he said, I meant it took 10 months that you would have to live. But you see what happened? She interpreted it as though it was going to take 10 months to heal. So guess what? She healed in 10 months. That's an actual true story, and that really happened. Now think about if she can do that. Think about some of the challenges you're facing right now and some of the things you tell yourself, well, I can't do that. I've never been a runner. Well, I can't lose 10 pounds. It's too difficult for me. I'll never get that job. I just don't have the qualifications, or whatever excuse or whatever thoughts we put in our mind. Think about how could we shift that? How can we reinterpret what we've put the spin on to make it something positive instead? She interpreted what the doctor said with her own pattern of positive thinking. I would say this woman's the ultimate optimist because where she was coming from was a thought from positive thought. Now the doctor was not. So guess what? He was astonished. But guess what? He's got a new trick in his bag now, doesn't he? Because he's got one patient that didn't know what he was talking about, and it went right over her head. She interpreted it a different way and healed. So now he could maybe tell the next person that story, and that healing may go on to other healings. The human body is comprised of 1 million cells. Our mental energy accentuates the fiber of our being because our mind controls every function of our body. Every activity of our body is controlled by our mind. Remember, the subconscious accepts suggestions and beliefs from the conscious mind as a pattern to work by. I always think of it as, remember those little kits that you could get that were plaster Paris, and you would mix that up with water, and you'd put your hand in that plaster Paris, and then from that you would take your hand out and you'd have an impression of your hand, right? Well, it's the same thing with our subconscious and our conscious. Our subconscious is that plate of plaster Paris that's accepting whatever it is that we put into it, right? So when we hold up the picture of our hand, we're not disappointed because that's exactly what we put into it. But guess what? There's plenty of people out there that are disappointed that there isn't a brand new Porsche sitting in their driveway. And the reason that they're disappointed is because they're forgetting what did you feed into your consciousness about accepting a Porsche in your experience, or a wonderful relationship, or bundles of money instead of a goose egg in your bank account, right? So we can create the things that we desire, but we need to feed our consciousness and be fully aware and be experts at what it is we do want instead of what it is we don't want. Many of us are experts at what it is we don't want. I'll tell you, you could start a conversation and all of us could go on and on and on commiserating about all the things that haven't worked. But let's shift the topic to being what it is that does work in our experience. What are the positive things that we want? It's your spiritual consciousness, your knowledge of the presence of God with your total and complete fulfillment that interprets everything that occurs in your life. So let's stop a second and let's affirm. I am the consciousness creating the good that I desire. My good comes to me in a myriad of ways. I allow unexpected good to come into my life right now. My consciousness of God as my supply is my supply. Do you believe it? Say things like that to yourself over and over again. And what are you doing? You are conditioning your mind. You are shifting the consciousness of your mind to accept in these truths, because many of us have accepted things that are not true. There is a book by Joel Goldsmith, and it's called Conscious Union with God. And he says there's two things we need to do to undo the error thinking that we have. And one is by right identification, and the other is by reinterpretation. So right identification goes back to what we stated in our opening affirmation, that God is the underlying substance of reality and reality of all form. God is the substance and supply of everything, okay? So there's our identification. Now what's our reinterpretation? Reinterpretation means anything that you see in your life as an appearance. It could be poor health. It could be bad communication. It could be unhappy relationships. It could be whatever the issue du jour is for you. All of those things are appearances. They are not the truth. They are appearances. But you'll say, but Reverend Mary, they're very real in my experience. And I say, yes, they are. They're very real in your experience because you believe in them. And you've put more belief in what is not working than what is working. So right identification means opening up to that affirmation that God is my substance. But reinterpreting is the experience and the focus on the good that you desire. All the experiences can change the moment you shift your interpretation of it. Like if everything is an expression of God and something negative shows up, how can you reinterpret that negative expression, that negative experience? That thing that's giving you a real headache, how can you reinterpret it to be God in action? And the moment you do that, it will shift. It must, because you've put that new realization into it. So part of realizing your perfection to create the outcome you desire is to review your life and what might need reinterpreting. I'd like to close with this very interesting little thing that I read. I've shared this with some of my classes before. It's called The Stages of Recovery. Stage 1. I walk down the street and there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in and I'm lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault and it takes me forever to find a way out. Stage 2. I walk down the same street. There is a deep hole in the sidewalk and I pretend that I don't see it, but I fall in again. I can't believe that I'm in this same place, but it isn't my fault and it still takes a really long time to get out. Stage 3. I walk down that same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it and I know it's there, but I still fall in. It's a habit, but now my eyes are open. I know where I am. It's not my fault. Actually, it is my fault, and I get out immediately. Stage 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk, and I walk around it. Stage 5. I walk down a different street. Tonight, I encourage you to think about your own standard of perfection, the perfection of God realizing is you. Know your truth is at your command. State your desires, saturate yourself with affirmations, see the good in everything, and your appearances will shift to support that consciousness of love and light and beauty. And so it is. Thank you very much.